Hello everyone, and welcome to the CircuitPython Weekly for June 1st, 2020. This is the time of the week that we get together and talk about all things CircuitPython and also Python related, as well as sometimes random unrelated things. This meeting is held once a week, typically on Mondays at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. We hold it on the Adafruit Discord, which is, you can join at adafru.it/discord. I'm Katney, and I am sponsored by Adafruit to work on CircuitPython. If you join up on the Discord, you can check out the CircuitPython channel for any kind of notice of changes to the meeting, as well as any major announcements. We put all those in that chat. You can also request to be added to the CircuitPythonistas role. We tag that role with meeting updates, and also we have in the past tagged that role if we manage to really break CircuitPython to let everybody know to update. CircuitPython development is sponsored by Adafruit, so please support them by purchasing hardware from adafruit.com. This meeting is recorded. We record both the voice chat and the CircuitPython text chat. It is put up on YouTube, and it is made available as a podcast. If you are not interested in being recorded, you can opt to be text only, and we have a notes document that goes with the meeting, which will have timestamps in it. So if you want to read through meeting notes instead of watching it, that is an option, and you can also scrub to a spot that you want to listen to specifically. But if you are text only, you can add your notes to the text document, and I will read them off as we get to them, and that way you don't have to be recorded. Or if you don't have a mic, that kind of thing, just let us know so we can do that. This meeting is run in 5 parts. The first part is community news, which is an overview of what's going on with Python on hardware in the community, as well as other things. It's sort of a quick preview of our Python for Microcontrollers newsletter. The second part is state of CircuitPython, libraries, and Blinka. This is a statistical overview of the project by the numbers to give us an idea of the health of the project and where the project is at. Outside of what it is we're actually doing. It is divided up into 3 parts where we talk about it overall, and then we'll talk about the core, the libraries, and Blinka separately. The third part of the meeting is Hug Reports. Hug Reports is an opportunity to give a shout out to people for doing something good. We do this every week. It is held as a round robin where the person who's running it will start and then continue through the list alphabetically, giving everyone a chance to give a hug report. Again, if you're lurking, we'll skip you. If you are text only, we'll read off your notes if there are any. And if you have a mic, you will unmute it at that point and read off your hug reports. The next section is status updates, which is a chance to talk about what you've done since the last meeting, what you will do over the course of the next week until the next meeting. It's also an opportunity for other members in the chat to give tips and tricks in response to any questions you might have, any sort of quick questions, that sort of thing, can be handled in status updates. And then the last section is In the Weeds, which is where we take more long-form discussions. This is, it can come out of status updates. If something in status update seems like it's going to be a longer discussion, we will move it to In the Weeds, but you can also just have an In the Weeds topic. If you have any topics, please add them to the notes during the meeting so we're not waiting around at the end to see if anyone has any topics. There's already one topic, which is excellent. And so when we get to it, I will turn it over to the individual who added it to talk about it, and we'll go from there, and everyone can be involved in the weeds discussion. And that covers how this meeting goes. So with that, let's move on to community news. There's a Summer of Making Hack Club involving free hardware. GitHub is sponsoring $50,000 worth of hardware grants for student makers alongside support from Adafruit and Arduino for Gear. You can check that out on the Adafruit blog, or there is a link for Hack Club signups. Microsoft and GitHub announced that they are making an online integrated development environment, an IDE, such that students can get right to work in a web browser, avoiding software conflicts that might happen with code installs on their local machines. Code on a laptop or with a tablet, students won't be slowed down by their devices. They can get started quickly in the same coding environment so educators can teach instead of troubleshooting. Currently, integration includes MakeCode Arcade, which will likely receive Python programmability later this year as it is rolled out across the MakeCode family. And info on that is available on github.blog. The Python Software Foundation has announced the first beta of Python 3.9, scheduled for production release in October. With release of the beta, all of the major changes of Python 3.9 are set. Python has been previously developed and released every 18 months. PEP 602 is accepted with the Python development team adopting an annual release cycle. The new Python timeline means 3.9 will ship in October 2020. 3.10 has officially started pre-alpha development on May 19th, 2020, and will enter alpha development phase when Python 3.9 ships, and will ship October 2021. Future Python releases will follow the same pattern, and you can check out that on the link that was just posted. The Raspberry Pi Foundation has a weekly newsletter where you can follow the latest news on the Pi platform. Some of the notes this week was that the 8GB Raspberry Pi 4 is now on sale. There is another Raspberry Pi OS update and a virtual tour of Raspberry Pi OS. There's a project where you can work from home on Air Lite using CircuitPython and an Adafruit Circuit Playground Express. The Pew M4 now comes in a kit, so you can get programming with the CircuitPython Pew M4 kit. Learn how to make a Discord bot in Python in this project on RealPython. And that is a quick overview. Do you want more community news or have a project or other Python on hardware related content to share? Check out the Python for Microcontrollers newsletter, submit your content, or view a preview on GitHub. All right, and that is community news. Next up is the state of CircuitPython, the libraries, and Blinka. This is a statistical overview of the entire project, as including the core of CircuitPython, the actual language, all of the CircuitPython libraries, and Blinka, our compatibility layer for single board computers. So we will talk about the project overall, and then we'll talk about the individual bits separately. So overall, we had 28 pull requests merged by 20 authors, which is getting up there with a record for us, I think. Problem is I recognize some of you from Discord, so I don't know whether you're new to the submission thing here, but KMash98, Brad Chan, DNS Software, I think those are the three names I don't recognize as authors previously. Thank you so much for your, for new submissions, and 11 reviewers, which is excellent. The more reviewers we have, the more authors we can support. So that's always great to see that number being so high. And we had 22 closed issues by 14 people and 15 open by 12 people, meaning we are net down. I do want to point out that those are great numbers based on how many people are opening and closing issues. Those are some of the highest numbers I think we've seen in terms of people being involved with issues. So that's really great. We like to see our issue list go down, but more importantly, we like to see more people involved. So even if that means more issues, it's always excellent to see that we had so many people involved. So overall, the latest unstable version is 5.4.0 beta 0, and things have been going really well with it. If you haven't tried it yet, please download it from circuitpython.org/downloads and try it with your projects. Let us know if you run into any issues or if it's working for you. We're looking at releasing 5.4.0 beta 1 this week, which will have a number of updates, and we're always looking for more testing and feedback, so please give that a try as well once it's released. It will also be available at circuitpython.org/downloads. We're continuing to see new libraries. We've got plans to keep up with the issues list over the summer and get some of the bugs fixed and enhancements implemented. If you're looking to contribute to the CircuitPython project, the libraries are a great place to start. Check out open PRs and issues on circuitpython.org/contributing. For PRs, take a look at it, test it if you have the hardware, and either way, leave a comment to let us know what you've done. For issues, find one that interests you and begin work on it. If you need assistance with Git and GitHub, we have a guide, or we are always available on Discord and or GitHub to help you out with that. We want you to contribute. We want you to be able to join up with us. So it's something that is important to us to do, so never hesitate to ask. Blinka continues to grow and see updates. Melissa's currently working on display I/O for Blinka. The number of supported boards continues to increase, which brings CircuitPython libraries to more single board computers for the ease of CircuitPython on Linux. And that's where we are overall. So with that, I will turn it over to Scott to talk about the core.
Awesome, thank you, Kattni. All right, for the core, we had 10 pull requests merged from 10 different authors, which is awesome. Thank you to Ver Alfred, Weblate, Brad Chan, Bergdahl. I think all did translations, I believe. And then Dave Putz and Duckman are occasional contributors, so thanks to those folks as well. We had 4 reviewers. Thanks again to our reviewers. We can't have lots of authors without lots of reviewers. So again, if you want to help review, we'd love to have the help. Reach out to us. We'll get you ramped up. We have 14 open pull requests. A couple of those are a little bit old, but the remainder are brand new, which is great. Issues-wise, we had 6 closed issues by 2 people and 6 opened by 6 people, which is awesome, and we're net 0, which is great, for a total of 303 open issues, with the link in the notes doc to all of the issue list there. Milestone-wise, 7 issues are not assigned a milestone, even though at this time last week, or was it Tuesday, the last meeting, we were down to 0 again. So we're going to have to take a look at that as well and get some milestones assigned to things. Basically, it's a proxy for whether we've triaged the issue or not. So we should do that. And that's it for the core.
All right, thanks, Scott.
Mm-hmm.
Now we will go ahead and talk about the libraries. So on the libraries, we had 15 pull requests merged by 8 authors. I believe Flame Eyes is also newer. Jim Bob Bennett is newer in KMatch 98. So thank you to our newer people, and thank you to everybody else who has been submitting for a while. And we had 8 reviewers, which is fantastic. In terms of merged pull requests, the oldest was 17 days and the youngest is 0 to 1, leaving us with 25 open pull requests. Again, the oldest one of those is still being worked on slowly, so we are working with the original author to leave that open and continue to allow that to be worked on. We had 13 issues closed by 12 people and 8 open by 6 people, so we are net down, leaving us with 162 open issues. All of this information is available on circuitpython.org/contributing. So like I said, if you're interested in contributing, that is the place to start. You'll find all the open PRs, all of the open issues, and some library infrastructure issues. All of the issues should have labels on them, so you can search them by label to find a good first issue if that's something you're into. Or if you want to try and fix a bug or add something new to a library, bugs and enhancements are available as well. In terms of library updates in the last 7 days, we had 1 new library, the PM25. And we had a few updated libraries, the Azure IoT, IR Remote, ICM20X, Display Text, and LED Animation. And Blinka was updated as well. And that's it for the libraries. So I'll turn it over to Melissa to talk about Blinka.
Hello. So Blinka is our CircuitPython library compatibility layer for single board computers, such as the Raspberry Pi. And this week we had 3 pull requests merged by 3 authors and 3 reviewers, leaving 0 open pull requests, which is good. There were 3 closed issues by 3 people and 1 open by 1 person, leaving us net down, and that leaves 22 open issues left. There were 2,604 PyPI downloads in the last week, and we are currently supporting 50 boards. And that's it.
That's excellent. Thank you, Melissa.
Yeah.
And that is the state of CircuitPython, the libraries, and Blinka. Next up is Hug Reports, and for Hug Reports, as well as status updates, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff.
Hello, and thank you, Kattni. So my Hug Reports are to our translation contributors. Weblate continues to be going well, and I just want to thank them for providing that stuff. And then a group hug for the whole community. We're going in the US through some tough times right now, and I don't know, I just feel for people out there and their safety. So with that, I will hand it back to you, Kattni.
Thanks. All right, so I have a couple Hug Reports today. One is to Sedacious for helping me get started with a driver. It hadn't occurred to me to take about 4 steps back from where I thought I needed to start, and he helped me sort of step that back quite a ways to a much better starting point, and that was greatly appreciated. And a hug report to Crayola for continuing to work with the LED animation library. There were a couple outstanding bugs, and not only did he fix those, he significantly simplified the code and slimmed it down and made it faster, and continues to do so. So thank you very much for that. And a group hug to everyone. To echo Jeff, it's a bit rough at the moment, and I think we all need a group hug. And as well, a group hug to specifically our Discord community for staying positive and supportive throughout everything. It's not an easy thing to do, and I think we're doing it quite well. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Kattni. King or North is text only, so I'll read their notes. Hug to Adafruit for having some time to ship orders. Now I have a few new items. And group hug to all of people helping in Discord and having the patience to answer all of the questions with good decorum. And KJW is noted as lurking some of the time, so if you have a hug report, we'll come back to you. Otherwise, I'll read notes from KMatch98, who says, "Hi, I'm Kevin from Round Rock in Austin, Texas, the CyberDoc guy. Have been watching y'all for a couple of years now, and now learning the ropes and trying to contribute something back to the community. Thanks everyone for the help and patience and helping me feel welcome. Special thanks to Foamy Guy for work on the label library. Thanks to Jepler for sanity check on label memory usage." And now, Maker Melissa.
Hello. I want to give a high report to Blitzity DIY for the Take Your Board platform detect pull request. High report to Foamy Guy for making requested changes right away to the Learn Guide pull requests, and a group hug to everyone. And that's it.
Thanks, Melissa. Mark is lurking, and Mr. Certainly is text only. They say, "Thank you to all of the community moderators for their hard work, keeping the community a friendly and safe place for everyone." And Summersoft, are you on the mic today?
I am indeed.
Hello.
Hello. So I just have a group hug, mainly because I was behind in preparing today, and my brain is not helping. So just a group hug to everyone, and stay safe and stay sane.
Thanks. We'll try. Scott?
Hello.
Hi, Scott.
First, hug report to Code, Mark Olson in Discord for insisting I try the example code to fix the I2C on the ESP32S2 during my stream last week. It was what got it working, which is awesome. Thank you for hanging in on my stream and helping me out. Thank you to Mr. Certainly for being a constant positive presence in the Adafruit community, always on streams and always in Discord helping folks, and I really appreciate that. And lastly, thanks to Jerry for helping TAC this morning get CircuitPython building. It's really helpful to both have a Linux user and somebody that's in a slightly better time zone to help TAC out rather than me, which is a little bit tough. So thanks to Jerry for doing that.
Thanks, Scott. And now we've got Zoltan, V923Z.
Thanks, Jeff. So I would like to hand out a hug to Kevin Walters for finding and reporting a silly bug in Microlab. I have one hug for Jeff for sending the bug my way, and especially for bringing the latest Microlab's changes in line with CircuitPython. I would like to emphasize that despite my best efforts, since I lack resources, it's still a lot of work. So the community should appreciate Jeff's contribution to Microlab. And finally, but not least, I would like to hand out a hug to Dan for his insights on MicroPython, CircuitPython compatibility issues. And with that, back to you, Jeff.
Thank you. It's time to head up to the top of the alphabet with Andrew Tribble.
Yep, as I scroll back up here, I got one hug today for Tammy Makes Things. I got one of these little pulse oximeter sensors off Amazon that I'll talk about a little bit later. And she's been kind of driving support for, or they have been driving support for getting a library built for that. And I've been kind of pulling apart the Arduino library and seeing how many places there are, how easy it is to convert over. So she's been adding me to that project. And then, as always, group hug to all.
Thank you. Anecdata and Anby are lurking, so it's time for Brent.
Hello. Hug report to Jim Bennett for work on enhancing the Azure IoT guide and the library for CircuitPython. I'm really excited for that to come out, hopefully this week. Scott for ESP32S2 work. I'm excited to use it. I still have to order one. Jerry for the updated RFM9X guide. Jerry for a few weeks was working on updating the existing Adafruit Lua libraries, and they're really, really solid now. He added very complicated advanced features and wrote new pages to update it, and they're really well written. There's images of packet headers. It's really great. And a group hug to the CircuitPython community as a whole.
Thank you. Carter and C. Grover are lurking. So that brings us to Charles Burniford.
Well, I would like to give a hug to Tanup. I find it very interesting to watch his deep dives. I'm sort of hoping that you will get to the bus IO UART soon, so that we can bring up a MIDI library. Okay, and a group hug to everybody else for all the wonderful things that happen.
Thank you, Charles. And good morning, Dan. Or I guess it's afternoon.
Okay, yeah. So thanks to Kevin Walters, who's been doing a lot of CircuitPython work recently and has been asking a lot of BLE questions and pointing out issues with the documentation and inconsistencies, and just being a really great user and finding problems and pointing out things. Thank you. Thanks to Roy Hooper, Crayola, for fixing a pixel buff issue and working on some other library related stuff. So that's really rolling forward now. Thank you. Zobs is working on all kinds of NRF stuff, and we appreciate all those pull requests. Thank you. Thanks to Zoltan for continuing to work on the really wonderful ULab library, which is an enormous addition to CircuitPython and MicroPython. Thank you. And finally, CamTom 480, who's sort of the official maintainer of the Presence port, I think is starting to make sure that they're keeping up with our changes and making sure that the port continues to work. So thank you. All right.
All right. Well, we've got a couple of lurkers, but I have notes from David Gloud, who sends a group hug, and from Dew Wester, who says a massive hug in hopes that all our peeps are safe in these times. And that brings us to Foamy Guy.
All right. Hello.
Hi.
A couple hugs this week. One for Jim Bob Bennett. Found an issue with the display text library with a recent update. And got that fixed with the PR. To KMatch98 for the text map, sort of alternative to label that uses less memory. It's got some trade-offs there, but it's really neat idea and cool way to do text labels. And then lastly, to Maker Melissa for doing a review on the tile map game code and offering some fixes and a couple other suggestions. And then I will just go ahead and echo as well a group hug for everybody. Really enjoy the positive community.
Thank you. And I've got notes from Geek Guy, who's text only and sends a group hug. And that means it's time for Hierophect.
So this week, thanks to Mark Olson for helping me out with some testing and verifying some issues that we had the STM32F7 this week. And thanks to Arturo and Tanut for their reviews on my IMX reviews or PRs. So yeah, and a group hug to everyone else.
Thank you. And with that, we have completed hug reports, which I realize now I never told anybody how hug reports is done. So now that we've done that, I'll tell you how status updates are done. They're done in a round robin fashion, starting with me and continuing in alphabetical order. Just take a few moments to tell us, if you like, what you've been up to last week, what you hope to do this week, and if you want to, tell us something else that you're up to that's not directly related to CircuitPython. Could be, I don't know, I hear we talk about laying tile or, felling a forest of trees or what have you. So as soon as I've scrolled down to my notes, I will get us started. So last week, I got SDIO working on the STM32F405 Feather, although that's not in the PR yet. And I worked on a lot of little things that I didn't note down at the time, so kind of lost to history. This week, I need to figure out or hand off some trouble I had with the STM32 HAL delay and HAL get tick functions. I think it has to do with the way that we've changed how we do timekeeping, not to use sysTick, because that's what HAL get tick does. Anyway, next, I need to get a start on SDIO on the SAMD51. This morning, I think I started and completed some work on ULab, Microlab that I've been putting off. And it would be nice if I could get back to a PR about having a linked list of background tasks. The main payoff of that is it lets it just be one quick check for whether there are any background tasks at all. The problem is that to really take advantage of it, you have to add an interrupt handler for every kind of thing that is a background task to add itself to this linked list. So it ends up touching all the ports to really make it work. Sorry, go ahead,
When you
Scott.
get back to that, can you check in with me? Because I'll probably end up doing it maybe next week. If you
okay.
First.
Yeah, I will talk to you before I pick that up. I'm pretty sure SDIO is going to keep me busy just because with the STM32, I could leverage HAL, and with SAMD51, I can't. I'll really have to learn it at the register level. So it will be a longer step of SDIO rather than a shorter step because the second one is not any easier.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just think we want to do the background task stuff before 5.4 is stable because it's so much worse.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful in getting the performance back that we got from the last kind of hacky do it once per millisecond thing.
Exactly.
This will be much better. And so, yeah, if you have any questions about that, we can sure talk in the weeds or just when you're ready to tackle it,
Yeah, I think next week is probably a better time, but if you get to
Yeah,
it before it, that's fine.
All right. And anyway, my fun stuff is one of the valences on the blinds fell off, and it was some injection molded plastic that held up for 20 plus years. But I modeled and printed a 3D replacement, so we'll just have to see how that goes. Not, I don't usually do 3D prints that have to have a lot of strength or stand up to a load over time. So it'll be interesting to see. In the middle of the night, there'll probably be a crash, and then I'll know it wasn't strong enough. And with that, what's up, Kattni?
All right. So I updated my notes from stuff and more stuff. I am
Good job.
Yeah, proud of that. So last week, finished up the LED animations guide and blogged it. Hilariously, at least it was funny to me. It's probably not really actually that funny telling the story, but I was asked to add one thing to one page, and when it was published, I showed off the guide to two people, both of whom independently came back and told me that I should add that same one thing to that same one page, which I hadn't gotten around to, so that thing has been added. And that was good feedback, apparently, because the first two people who did anything with the guide, both of them said, "Why is this missing? I didn't know what to do here." There was more bug fixes for the LED animation library, which also was tested on Raspberry Pi and works after it was actually Roy who discovered there was a bug in the setup.py for PyPI deployment. So there was just a space in the package name, so it couldn't be installed. So we fixed all that, and now it runs on Raspberry Pi as well. So if people want to do that, they can use the LED animation library on Raspberry Pi. I recorded a tutorial for Microsoft, which took a lot longer than expected, and I'm glad it's done. And then started the CircuitPython AHT-X0 driver for the AHT20 sensor. So this week is Library Monday, and then writing the AHT20 guide. I handed over the driver to Lady Ada to finish it more quickly because the product needs to go into the store this week. And given that tomorrow is Newsletter Video Tuesday, I wasn't going to be able to get it done in time. So she's going to finish that. And then I have finally Whatever Wednesday, mostly because we haven't really decided what I'm doing next, because the list of stuff that I have to do already is the most important stuff. So I will find out on Wednesday what I am doing at that point for the rest of the week. And that's what I got.
Thank you. Kinger North is text only. And says, last week did another live stream, this time on using I2C, using CircuitPython and Arduino on my YouTube channel, Kinger North. This week, getting a new show ready, topic to be determined, as well as trying out testing the boards I just got, the Clue, Feather, NRF 52840 cents, and the Teensy 4.1. And KJW, if you're not lurking, let us know. Otherwise, I'll read K-Match's notes. They say, created a text map library to reduce the memory usage to display text on LCD displays versus the current label library. It uses a bitmap buffer to draw the text rather than the collection of tile grids. It works with BDF loaded fonts, but no built-in font right now. Now, Markdown parser / renderer in CircuitPython. The work on label and text map has been a rabbit hole when developing this. It's working now, but I want to add code blocks before sharing version 0.0001. Also supporting David Glaude for feature request for BLE keyboard input, issue in place. Maybe discuss it in the weeds. Other, exploring how to design print-in-place features for 3D printing. And Maker Melissa, that brings us to you again.
Hello. This week I had a couple being bonnet demos. Added more boards to CircuitPython.org, and I reviewed some pull requests. I think I'm probably missing something there. Anyway, this week I'm gonna working on writing an Arduino sketch for the BNO 055 so it works with the web serial 3D model viewer. And then whatever else comes up, because I'm not sure. And that's it.
Did you have display I/O stuff last week, or was that all wrapped up the prior week?
If I wrapped it up at the end of the prior week.
Okay. I'm just still reeling from how awesome that is. So,
thanks.
Want to mention it again.
Thanks.
Mark Gamblor is lurking, and so is Mark Olson, but I have notes from Mark. Last week, nothing to say really, had a slow week. This week, we'll get DAPIO finished, I think. Mr. Certainly is text only and has a non-CircuitPython note. Had an ESXi server crash last night on me and spent some time restoring and rebuilding a handful of virtual machines. Having timely backups helped a lot. It makes the process much less frustrating. All right, we're ready for you, Summersoft.
Hello again. So last week, with regards to Rosie Pie, physicei.com lives. It's actually my first public website ever. It's pretty barren, mainly because it only exists for seeing test results out of Rosie Pie tests. But I do have a mocked version that I will put up. So you can see what it kind of looks like. So that was kind of most of last week. And then also, so my soft reset and the bootloader problems that I've been having for a while now have magically disappeared. I'm assuming it was just a kernel or a system driver bug, but I'm really just glad that it's over. So, and then on the core, I spun up, the issue came up with USB vendor and product IDs duplicates. So I spun up a quick checker for CI. It'll stay open for a while we handle, or the current duplicates are handled. And then there's a PR in the cookie cutter repo that FlameEyes had put in to apply the reuse licensing stuff. I started reviewing it and I attempted to figure out how to handle multiple copyrights in the SPDX format. I couldn't find anything, and then I got distracted with other things and forgot to go back to it. So for this week, Rosie Pie, just kind of back to moving forward. This week mostly we'll be focusing on getting the remaining repositories cleaned up, and then moved over to the PhysicCI organizational account in GitHub, and then continue researching switching to using PyTest as the test framework versus the one that I rolled on my own, and then try and finish that cookie cutter reuse PR. And that's about all I got on the books.
Thank you. Scott, what do you have for us?
All right, I got two pictures. I'm going to post them so that people can download them. It may take a little while. First two things before I talk about the pictures. One, I got multiple ESP32S2 fixes checked in last week. Should be more reliable, which is good. And I got I2C working. That's still in my own branch. That's not checked in. This week, I want to complete BusIO with I2C and UART and get a PR out for BusIO. The picture that I posted is an adapter between the Sala and the Feather that I ordered from Oshpark, and I assembled the first one this weekend. Basically gives you a Feather footprint based on the Sala, along with the native USB, JTAG connector, which I haven't tested, and a STEM and Qt connector that I have not tested as well, but will. My plan is to test this all today and just make sure that those things work. I tested USB, which is the thing that I cared about the most. I put a link in the notes doc if you want to order it. If you want to assemble it yourself, let me know. I can help you with that. I know Jerry already ordered it, which is exciting. And I actually just shared it with Lamore in our internal meeting before this, and her response was, "Oh yeah, we should like I'll make that." So we may actually sell some of these because Salas are available and more people are buying them. And then lastly, I'm planning on releasing beta 1 this week, just so that we can get all of the changes that have gone into master into a beta release. So that'll probably happen either later today or tomorrow. So yeah, ESP32S2 all day, every day.
Yeah. I haven't ordered one yet, but any one of these days I'm going to. I'm just curious, why did you use the stacking headers rather than...
I don't have any regular headers.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you wanted to probe everything or if it was that. That was my second guess.
I didn't cut them off because of that. But I just don't have regular headers. So I use stacking headers, which is what I had.
Yep. All right. That brings us around to the top of the alphabetical list with Andrew Tribble.
Yep. 1 second. Well, I seem to have lost my list here.
You want to do it from memory, or would you like me to read it?
Yeah, I can try to do a little bit of it from memory.
Sure.
So last week, I was still working on the PyAlert weather radio project. Yes, it now has a name. It's not just the weather radio project anymore. Nothing to report from the CircuitPython side, just a matter of tying up some loose ends on the backend stuff. I'm setting up like a caching server so I don't blow up the National Weather Service with CircuitPython devices. And then this week, just continued development on that. And also, as I stated earlier, working on the MAX 301002 pulse oximeter sensor. It's just a little IR-based pulse oximeter. There's a couple different revisions of them by a bunch of different people. So far, there's no CircuitPython library for it. There's only an Arduino library developed by SparkFun. So me and Tammy Makes Things, and it sounds like a couple other individuals are starting to kind of unpack that library and see how we can go about converting it over to CircuitPython. So that's been a little bit of what I was doing last week and this week. Also, on the topic of fun things, I now have my 3D printer fully converted over to dual filament single nozzle. Turns out there was quite a bit of software to try to convert over, both in the printer itself and then on the computer as well as a couple engineering challenges trying to get all the brackets and everything set up to make the printer do something that it's not really designed to do. So that's been my last couple weeks.
Cool. If you have a picture of a successful dual filament print, I would love to see it.
Yeah, so I'm still setting up Cura currently, so that should be coming hopefully this week.
All right. We have a couple of lurkers, and that brings us around to Brent.
Hello. This last week, I worked on adding FONA 3G compatibility to the CircuitPython FONA library. If you don't know, 2G networks are getting sunsetted at the end of this year for the United States. So it's good to have a module that won't get sunset like Python 2. There are different modules. They're actually physically larger, if you've played around with cell phone modules before, than 2G GSM modules, but they're region specific, so you need to buy one for Europe or America, whereas 2G modules work wherever you deploy them. I spent some time as well refactoring it behind the scenes to make it easier to write CircuitPython code and read CircuitPython code for these modules that seem to do everything. They can even do FTP. I want to add voice. It shouldn't take me a long time, but I am taking a break from these to let this work soak and hack on other tasks. And that's about it.
All right. Well, Carter and Seagrover are lurking, and that brings us to Charles. Do you have anything to report this week?
Didn't get to much. I'm sort of I'm waiting number one for my ESP32S2, and second of all, I've also and Tanu mentioned that he's going to try to get it done as the UART, so I can play around with MIDI on the ESP32S2. Try to build make sure the MIDI library works. so I can use it for some of my play toys because it's got a lot more memory. Okay, that's
All
it.
right, sounds good. Dan, what do you have to report?
Okay, so I'm continuing to work on sort of the Blinka equivalent of _BLEIO for host computers using the Bleak Python package, which runs on Mac OS, Linux, and Windows. And as I mentioned last week, I got scanning working. I cleaned up the code some. It's still not working on Mac OS. There's a problem inside the Bleak library, and I have an issue open about that. And I hope to have a simple example of Bleak acting as a central and talking to some other Bluetooth device in a few days, because I'm fleshing out the rest of the code right now. Bleak only does central. It can't act as a peripheral. That's not implemented. But that's the majority of the cases where we usually want to talk to other peripheral devices. And finally, this is not really CircuitPython, but I'd had a lot of trouble trying to write fuses on various boards with SAMD21 especially, and I was really confused by this. And after a long go around with one of the Sager customer support people, it turns out that if you ask to write a value into Flash, it doesn't necessarily do it right away. It says it did it, and if you read it back, you'll see it, but it's actually caching the value, and it only writes it out if you do something like single step the processor or exit cleanly from the program. So I was writing fuses, and then I would unplug the board and plug it back in, and the fuse values weren't written, and that's because it didn't actually write them. It's trying to conserve writes. It's trying to conserve writes and make it faster, but it's pretty obscure and it's not documented. So I will write this up eventually so other people can know it also. Okay, that's it.
I hope you didn't lose a whole lot of time to that.
Oh, about 5 or 6 hours.
Oh.
I mean, over a period of months. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. All right. Dave P is lurking and David Gloud is lurking, but I have notes from David. He says last week, clue bit 2 pi plus Keybow Mini equals mini custom USB keyboard. And I'll paste these links in just a second. And BLE Keybow Mini, same as above, but wireless. Oh, is somebody else getting them? Anonymous Hedgehog is going to paste those in, so never fear.
Is it my turn, and do you hear me?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the note said that you were lurking, so please, go ahead.
Yeah. But maybe I've got something in the weeds, so I wanted to test the microphone too. So this week I've been playing again with my Bit2P, which is an adapter to connect the clue to Raspberry Pi hat or bonnet or whatever the name. And this week I've been playing with the Keybow Mini because John Park was playing with the bigger Keybow and made some code available. I think the Learn guide is not there yet, but I'm lurking also on the GitHub. So I made a USB keyboard with those 3 keys, and you can send keys to your computer. And then I made a BLE keyboard also with those 3 keys. That's about the thing I've done. And in the weeds, I would like to discuss how to make the CyberDuck better and how to make a CircuitPython computer, which will maybe be a discussion about BLE keyboard input with Dan.
All right. Well, thank you, and it's nice to hear from you. So that next up is Do Wester, who is lurking. So Do Wester got a new Pi 4B with 8 gigabytes of RAM and a 64-bit operating system. Yay! And tried out on Pi 4 gigabytes and 8 gigabytes. It is snappy. Tried out NinjaFlex on an Ender 3 Pro with so-so results. And they ask the general question, any issues or expected issues with Blinka and 64-bit OS for Raspberry Pis? And Melissa, do you have a few words to say about that, or shall we just leave it for later?
Sorry, I just kind of got back here. What did you say?
Okay, in DoWester's status updates, they say any expected issues with Blinka and 64-bit OS for Raspberry Pi.
It's untested.
It's untested. All right, so DoWester will let us know. And that brings us to Foamy Guy.
Right. Hello. For last week, lots of testing of display text, a couple of different PRs for the existing library, and then I played some with KMash's new bitmap style labels, and then also going to work on that a little bit more this upcoming week. I want to create a couple more examples for that. Some other stuff I did last week, though, was for work, we're working on a sort of hand sanitizer kiosk type situation where it's got a screen that you really don't touch very much, but it does dispense some hand sanitizer below that. And part of the thing that it needs to be able to do is scan like employee badges. So as a mock-up, I actually used one of the RFID scanners in CircuitPython to set that up and had it plugged into the kiosk. It was kind of fun. And then a few more was the 16x8 LED matrices, all the little LED matrices. I have a Featherwing one, but there's a couple other form factors. I made some eyes and with a couple of different animations like blinking and a few others. And I want to work on that a little bit more next week as well. And then the last thing for last week was just little fixes and improvements on the tile map game from the PR there. And then for next week, a couple of the ones I mentioned, and then some that I haven't yet mentioned was going to be looking into TensorFlow Lite on the edge badges, what I have looked so far, but they have like the yes/no word example. And I want to look into using a external microphone there and possibly use that with the hand sanitizer kiosk as a way to input to that without touching it. Obviously, that's going to be a good thing for that. And then I am starting to work on a desktop clock, a pretty basic project. Just gonna show the time, maybe a couple other messages or something like that. But I'm kind of planning out the print and the circuit this upcoming week. And then the last one is I need to verify and then document, perhaps open an issue for something I found with UGame. I think the buttons might be flipped around on the Pipe Badge device compared to some of the other devices. So I need to nail that down and go ahead and get an issue created for it. But that's all I got.
All right. Well, I have some notes from Geek Guy, who is text only. Last week, closed my PR to add the UDO bolt to Blinka because I think sysfs is not enabled in the kernel. And this week, working on multi-display support for the HT16K33 library. And that brings us to Hierophect, who gets to round out the group.
This past week, I was working on IMX RT stuff, doing my best to break things, and for once, it's good that I wasn't very successful. We didn't end up having a lot of problems across the port. The ones that I did find were generally pretty easy to fix, so got some good verification that the IMX RT port works pretty well across bus I/O, digital I/O, analog I/O, etc., etc. Let's see. This week, I'm going to be moving back a little bit to STM32 rather than the IMX port, just because we've had a number of things kind of crop up recently, some of which are pretty serious issues on some of the less used boards, like the Discoveries and the Nucleos, which are kind of the native boards that are distributed by ST. They're a little bit less common in the community than things like the Feathers, but they're still important to support. So I'm going to be revisiting kind of how low power stuff is managed on the STM32, because there's some kind of serious issues that can crop up, especially on the H7 and F7 ST dev boards that keep them from booting, which is no good. And along with that, I'll probably also be visiting the timer, a new timer allocator for the STM32, so that PWM and Pulse IO can be enabled on some of the other really common STM32 kind of low-end boards, the ones that are and taking a look at RGB matrix on STM32, which I've been meaning to do for a while. I do get back to IMXRT. It's going to be to tackle pulse I/O, looking out the pulse in, pulse out, which I did not too long ago on the STM32. So hopefully that should be pretty quick. But for now, just want to tackle the crashes. That's it for me.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of status updates. And now it's time for In the Weeds, where we can take a little longer to discuss issues that don't fit within the format of Hug reports or status updates. So if you've got a topic, please add it to the document, and I will just run them from top to bottom. Starting with Zoltan, you have an issue. If you're ready to go, I'll let you introduce it.
Thanks, Jeff. So I think I would like to address the question to Scott, because he is the most passionate about it. And it goes back to this issue about branding, which is listed in this document that I've just linked. So the question I actually would like to ask is, what happens, or what should happen with branding if you create a board that, for example, doesn't have a USB connector, which is, according to the document, mandated. So if you would like to do something like this for the NRF 52840, which is an SMD only without any exposed pads, so that means that if you don't have a reflow oven, then you are basically, you don't stand a chance. So if I wanted to make a breakout board for that, which looks something like this, is Circuit Brains Deluxe. And if I wanted to install or upload a CircuitPython firmware onto this NRF chip, may I still call it CircuitPython, or you rather I didn't?
That's a good question. I hadn't really thought about this case where the board by itself is not that useful.
It depends on how you define usefulness. So really the problem with there are two issues here. For example, the Adafruit feather exposes some pins of the NRF, but that's only a fraction.
Right.
On the other hand, it has a USB connector, so your criterion is satisfied.
Right.
But still, the point is, if you need more pins, then the Adafruit feather is a no-go. And I think most of the similar boards suffer from this issue, that they expose I don't know, 15, perhaps 20 out of the 60 I/O pins, and that's a waste of resources in a way.
Yep.
Well, so we do support the dev kit board, the PCA 10056. So the number of pins doesn't really matter. As long as there's a board definition that's in the Adafruit CircuitPython repo, that seems fine. If you'd like to submit a port to such a board, then it would be CircuitPython.
That's fine, but it would still miss the USB connector.
I think but its USB is possible, and if somebody wanted to use this in a CircuitPython way, all they have to do is wire up a USB connector. Yeah.
Right. I was just asking because this branding document explicitly mentions the USB plug, which should appear as a CircuitPython drive when plugged in. And obviously, if you don't have that, then it's not going to appear as anything. So, but then, can I interpret Dan's words as such that as long as the USB port is exposed,
Right. Did that mute it for everybody?
Yeah.
So as long as these pins are exposed, then it's fine with you. If it's
Yeah,
called
I think so.
CircuitPython.
I am like this gets into the like FCC certification stuff has this as well. Like, does it stand as it's on its own as a product, or does it really like is it designed to be integrated into something else?
Okay.
Like this board, like I would expect it to be mounted to another PCB, and in order for that PCB's worth of product to count as CircuitPython, like I would want USB to be accessible.
Mm-hmm.
But for CircuitBrains Deluxe on its own, like I don't. As
Well,
long as they're.
It has a different name, and I think it's on purpose.
Okay.
But I wouldn't like to do that. So that's my actually it's not a question. That's a plea in a way that I would like to call it CircuitPython for many reasons, but I also understand if you say that that's beyond the pale, because
Well, I think like users should have access to CircuitPython Drive. Like that is a core piece of what CircuitPython is, and the branding is.
But if it's possible, it's not necessarily. It might be that they run it without.
Right. So actually, Jeff pointed this out, and this is really the state of the matter, that the this board exposes these two pins, the D- and D+ pins. It's just such that it doesn't have a USB connector.
Mm-hmm.
But since your document specifically mentions the USB connector, I think I should clarify this question before jumping off the deep end. If you say it's okay if I call it CircuitPython, that's fine with me. If you say you wouldn't like that, that's also fine with me. I just have to know. That's all.
I guess I think the module, like in the sense of the CircuitBrains Deluxe, doesn't have enough context to know whether it's actually the case or not. I kind of like Anastasio's idea of CircuitPython Ready. Like somebody can use that module as something to create a CircuitPython board.
And they could use, but if we had a port, if we had such a board in the NRF, in the ports NRF thing, then you could say, oh, this is like a module, and it's all you have to do is load. You know, you could attach, you can connect it up any way you want.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's castellated board and or whatever.
Right.
Then I don't see anything wrong with calling it CircuitPython because it's available.
Okay.
I mean, if we have, you know, we have these like these the board, there are many circumstances where a board might not be used with a USB port connected all the time. It's just that, I mean, would you like remove the USB code for something like that? I don't think you would do that. So
no,
I think it's potential. Yeah.
Actually, I think it concerns the placement of. So if you take the Adafruit feather, then the position of the USB connector is fixed. You can't really do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
And on a board with space constraints, that's a problem.
Right.
So if on the other hand you have such a module where you can solder this piece of PCB on your motherboard or whatever you would call it, and you place the USB connector wherever you want, then I wouldn't want to discard or remove the USB connector. That's really a question of flexibility, I would say, and I'm really open to submit what did you call it, a pin definition file. That's perfectly fine with me. I would actually love to do that. I'm not so far ahead yet, but still I wanted to clarify this issue before jumping to conclusions as to whether I can use CircuitPython as a name or not.
And I guess the secondary question is whether there's something without whether we would permit something without a USB connector to be submitted as a board on the CircuitPython master branch.
We already have those boards.
I think it's not going to change too much because this is an NRF. So this is really nothing else but but exposing the pins, all the pins of the NRF module, which you already have on the Adafruit feather. That's the MDBT50, I think. But it has 60 I/O pins and only 18 are exposed on the feather. So I'm not going to change anything in a sense. I'm just going to add 40 more pins.
Right. And now wait, just say there is such a board already. We already have a board definition for the development kit board from Nordic. So it has pretty much all the pins. It's not the module, but it's we have a board with nearly all the pins. I think that board exposes all the pins because it's a development kit. So so that's you could use that as a starting point and maybe renumber them or something. Yeah.
Okay, sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, I think yeah, please go ahead.
I think there's two parts to this discussion, and I think in terms of just in general pin availability, we should always, when we do ports, our goal should be to support all pins on a micro, even if boards don't break them out, so that boards can, when they create their mapping, can have it just work. I actually just replied to somebody in the Teensy forums about Teensy 4.1 and adding support for those pins, and it's like, oh, it's easy. Like, we just add a mapping and it should just work. So I think the bigger question is the USB experience, and developing boards where you're expecting them to be used in conjunction with other boards. And an interesting case for this is actually the ESP32S2 Salas, which have USB, but it's not connected to the native USB.
Okay.
And that, I think that's exactly, like this corner case that you're talking about, where the native USB is exposed, but it's not actually like easily accessible through a connector.
Okay, but actually, I can make the question a bit harder for you. I could, sorry. So I could add a USB connector to it, a USB connector that you can break off, and then your condition is satisfied. And if you are constrained with space, then you just break it off.
I don't think you have to go to that effort.
Okay.
I mean, we already support the PCA 10059, which has a break-off USB connector. So I would just say again that I think that I wouldn't read too much legalism into what Scott wrote. I think he wrote it as he's trying to describe his experience. Would you say that, Scott? I mean, if, for instance, as David Glaude said, for instance, suppose we eventually made a board that didn't have USB, but you had the same functionality available through Bluetooth or only wirelessly or something like that, then I think we might revisit that decision, that statement of policy. So,
but actually, yeah, but that's a good point, because I don't know whether the bootloader currently supports that, but you could actually change the firmware over the air.
Right.
You don't need. Yeah, right. So I don't know if it's supported at the moment, but in that case, you definitely don't need a USB connector. Okay, well, I think that was my question. So I would just like to hand it over to the next person. Thanks a lot.
I think that it's important to reiterate the intent. The intent is that when somebody gets a board that supports CircuitPython, they can use it like other boards that support CircuitPython, right? And we've seen people, especially with the ESP8266 support we used to have, be like, I got this Feather Huzzah, why doesn't it show up as a CircuitPy drive? So it's got to be that, like, if you're advertising your board, and I think surface mount boards are an exception, and we can add this to the branding section. Maybe I'll put a PR out and get your feedback on that. But I think that, like, in its final form, the board should be able to it should be used as a CircuitPython board, which means there should be a USB connector on the board as a whole that people plug in and can edit their code with. I'd love to get to a point where BLE is kind of as well known as USB is in terms of workflow, but we're not there yet. If you want to help me work on that, I would love to. I think that's something that we've prioritized for a long time because it's such a high, it's an amorphous thing that nobody's kind of shown or demonstrated the power of. So I think we'll get there, but I don't think in the current state of CircuitPython, I don't think we can assume that like BLE only is CircuitPython proper.
Okay. Well, as I said, I am not done with this yet. I would just suggest at this point that once I have a working concept, I would bring up the question once more, and then
totally.
we can discuss it with concrete details.
Yeah, okay. Awesome.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Hey, Sultan, before you go.
Yes, I'm still here.
I just had a thought. What would happen if you put like a lot of motherboards on PCs do, put a set of pins that you could plug a external connector to? That wouldn't take up very much room, and you could still have the USB connector if you want. Somebody could still put the USB connector on your board with without a big hassle.
Right. I think that's definitely an option, and I actually consider that. I would like to get rid of the USB connector as such, but I'm not. So it shouldn't be a showstopper. If you insist, if Scott insists that it should be on, then it will be on. That's absolutely no problem. I would like to get rid of it, but your suggestion was, I think, quite interesting, and perhaps that's the way to go.
I just posted a link to a breakout board for USB Micro B. I think that there might be some utility in coming up with some term or some mention in the documentation for boards where you can use a separate breakout for USB, because just from an STM32 perspective, most Nucleo boards for all of the low-end STM32s, for instance, which are fairly popular boards, don't have any USB natively. Like, you have to plug it in over some pins, but it works fine if you do that. So that's just an additional product line that would be able to be supported. But it is tricky because you need to go on Adafruit. People need to be warned. They would need to be warned. You have to go on Adafruit or some other site and buy a totally separate thing before you can actually use CircuitPython in the traditional way.
I mean, that's exactly like this Salo adapter I just created. Like, it's exactly that for the Salos. So yeah. I'm curious to see what you're working on, Zoltan, because it is something I've thought a lot about as well.
Well, I can tell you in 2 sentences. I think the NRF chip is really great, especially that as opposed to the ESP32, the code is native, so it's not a task, not a FreeRTOS task, which has its own benefits. But on the other hand, it's totally inaccessible for a hobbyist. So if you don't have the tools, then it's hopeless. And I wanted to test things with that, and I realized that I would need an adapter board or something like that, a carrier board. But if I do that, then I could just publish it or make it available to everyone. It doesn't make sense to keep it to myself if it works.
Right. Cool. Look forward to it.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Okay, and we have a second in the weeds topic from David Gloud and KMatch98. So I will let you take it away, David.
Okay, so I discovered a Cyber, which is a self-contained computer with a screen and a way to plug a USB keyboard, and you can take the REPL and you can edit file and you can run them in CircuitPython. And it's a bit similar to Lisp computer or Forth computer from the past, where there was no operating system and it was just a computer and a language, and you could run code from there. And I've been working on USB host input. There is the Stargirl hostess featherwing, and prior to that there was that's using SPI, and it only exists with her for the moment. But there was before that a USB host coprocessor from GD Sport, which is working in serial, so UART. And I've been doing keyboard input in USB, talking Bluetooth or talking USB on the other side and that kind of stuff. So I was very interested into that CyberDuck, and I found out that we are missing BLE input for a keyboard. So I can do BLE out, I can do USB in, I can do USB out, but I cannot do BLE in. And there was a demo code, but it's completely commented out since they were changing BLE stack. And I'm looking for any ways to help that kind of CyberDuck stuff. So this could be a BLE input, so that way we don't need to hack stuff, and we could take a clue and a Bluetooth keyboard, and we have a computer, basically, with a bit of code from KMatch 98. And there is also that idea of could we have another input into the console or the REPL? Because today I think you can only get in through the USB serial. But maybe if it was UART, or if there was another way to plug into there. Okay, so I don't know, maybe Dan can discuss about the BLE HID input to see if
So I'm trying to remember. So Scott, like before we switched to your API, I had written some HID, BLE HID code. I don't remember if it was just peripheral or I started working on the host side.
There was a central code, but I don't know if it ever worked.
I can't remember whether I got it to work or Scott got it to work and then it changed, or whether we never. But I started working on it, and then I realized there was a lot to make it work than I thought. And so I stopped. This is like last week. So Scott, do you remember the circumstances?
I don't know if it ever worked. I never tried it. I think one of the challenges is actually coming up with the host side of those APIs.
Yeah.
Like the CircuitPython HID library itself is definitely geared towards being the device. So I think there's some work. That's probably the biggest set of work. I think getting the data from a BLE keyboard, which I should also point out that a lot of the Bluetooth keyboards you see are not BLE. To be very wary of that. Basically, if the branding, I don't know what it is in French, but in English, it's BLE Smart. If you're or Bluetooth Smart, like if your keyboard's not Bluetooth Smart, that means it's not actually BLE. And a lot, at least in the US here, a lot of the Bluetooth keyboards that are sold are still Bluetooth, not BLE. Which is, I think, one reason that it's actually less interesting than you may think, is because a lot of the Bluetooth keyboards people have won't actually work because they're like Bluetooth 3. So I think beware of that. That doesn't mean we shouldn't add support for BLE HID. It would be cool, I think. The other question I have is also, do you really need input at the level of like core CircuitPython, or is it adequate enough to have your CircuitPython code communicating to something and taking a second set of inputs? For example, with the USB serial or with the UART, like you from CircuitPython code.py can do all of the UART stuff that you want. What is it that you need, or why do you need that UART input to go into CircuitPython proper? Is a question I have.
Yeah, I don't know if KMatch 98 is there, because he made the CyberDuck and I did not replicate yet. Despite the fact that I've got the hardware now.
Right.
So Scott, yeah, I'm less familiar with doing it in the CircuitPython higher level code. Can you save having a separate board with still using UART input? I'm not sure what you're getting at.
Not if you're using a USB keyboard.
Okay, now I'm saying with the BLE input, you mentioned getting data from not core, but some higher level code through BLE.
Right. So, like we should have all the BLE stuff in place to like send packets to and connect to a BLE keyboard. Like that should all be there, but that won't allow you to do things like Control-C or code.py. Because like the CircuitPython code itself is not like inspecting the characters that are being sent across. So it's like not quite as good as like native USB serial because of that.
Okay. I'll speak for myself, and David may disagree, but if I could, actually get keyboard input from BLE, which again, for the code that I saw that Dan had there, didn't look like you could read the reports. You could send reports as a, I guess acting like a peripheral, but I didn't see the hooks for reading the reports in.
Yep.
But if you could do it at a high level, you could intercept it, right? And just like I did with the UART, if you could get them in, then you could figure out how you deal with them, even if they don't go straight to REPL. You could find ways around that.
Yeah, so I think that's the missing piece that you're getting at is like we don't have the HID library, we don't have the BLE library tested to be able to receive reports and parse them.
Yeah, exactly. If that was there, I think that would be a minimum feature set that could be useful.
Right. I think all of the core work is in place for that. I think you could do that from the Python side right now. To figure it out, like connect to the peripheral and start to receive, like subscribe to the characteristic and get the reports back. I think that's all doable from Python with what we have in the BLE library.
Okay. I took a little bit of look at those libraries and I sent a note to Dan, and he said there's more there than, it wasn't a quick fix. And I don't know if I'm up for figuring all that out based on my knowledge, but I'd be willing to help out if there's something you could point in a direction to look.
Yeah, I think the problem was the BLE part of the HID. The BLE HID library really was missing a large chunk of functionality.
Okay.
For the host side. And so I thought I could just the characteristics weren't defined right, or there was something wrong. I can't remember what it was, but I remember it was you that I had that conversation.
Yeah.
On it for like 20 minutes, and it was like, oh, this is not going to work. So I can't remember why now. So
okay. Yeah, and I got a few libraries in and I got lost, so I couldn't decipher exactly what was going on. Other than knowing the reports, there didn't seem like a way of getting hooks into the reports, getting input from them.
Right.
I want to help out if you guys could point in,
I can't remember what I said, whether I just said it doesn't work or I gave some other
I added it. It's in the issue if you want.
You pasted it in, so I'll look at. Right, I thought it was like, I'll just make this work, and I was like, oh, we can't. So
ping me on the issue again, and I'll try to look later today and give some more guidance on which direction to go. Because like, the way that I'm imagining it, and maybe we did this already, or maybe we should, but like, it should use packet buffer so that when you subscribe, you receive all of the report packets in, and then it's just a matter of how you parse the reports.
I would like to know what Stargirl already did as a software piece to understand the HID message. But what I did is just to copy and paste the message I get from serial to BLE or to USB. And it's by magic, the same API works. And apparently it was not only Dan, it was you too. Then I wanted to dig into, I need to decode. I need to see what is happening there so that I could change the keyboard, like from QWERTY to AZERTY or something like that. There is code, not published yet, but I think Stargirl has something.
Well, I don't think Stargirl's working on HID. I think she's doing MIDI.
Yeah, she's more interested in MIDI, I know.
And she's been using ASF, not tiny USB, which I've been bugging her about, but she hasn't done it. Because like for CircuitPython, I'd like us to do host through tiny USB, which would be awesome to do. I would love to support like, oh, that same micro B, if you plug in a USB keyboard with an OTG cable, like you get USB input instead. Which you can also do right now with PS2 keyboards if you have one of those. We actually do have PS2 support already.
Okay, well,
So I'm looking at the issue.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at the issue, and I said like, yeah, the problem was that there was no buffering on the report characteristic, so there was no FIFO originally. That's what the problem was, and it wasn't clear. Like I thought I would add a packet buffer, but it wasn't clear it was going to work right or something. I can't remember. And it was just the code was written really early in the rewrite, Scott. So it was missing some things that are now easier to do. I think.
Right. Part of the rewrite was making our BLE libraries more symmetric, right? Like you declare reports once and you design them so they work both directions as clients and peripherals, or clients and servers. Yeah.
Right. And BLE HID is actually a real stress test of a BLE library because it has so many characteristics.
And the characteristics have descriptors to tell you which report it is.
Yeah, there were a lot of things missing, and I don't remember this,
but the reports themselves are the same format as USB HID.
Yeah. All right.
So yeah, it's a cool idea. And we should work on getting better support for it, but it's just the weeds.
Okay. Yeah, if there's anything I can do to help, again, as a newbie here, program CircuitPython, let me know, even if it's just testing some examples.
Yeah, and all the stuff I do is basically taking example code from library, from John Park, from Learn Guide, and then play with them. I never invented something from scratch, let's say.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're getting at here is like the difference between those of us who are paid by Adafruit and had been doing it full time for the last 3 years, and what the volunteer efforts could do, and prioritization of those two things as well. Because like I said, like when I started looking in BLE HID, like I actually had trouble buying a BLE keyboard. Like it was not easy to actually find a BLE keyboard, and I think that really turned me off of like the prioritization of supporting that stuff. It's more common to see mice than it is to see keyboards that are BLE. Like even looking through like the current Logitech keyboard line, like a lot of those are still BLE Bluetooth 3. They're not BLE. Yeah. Like the Apple Magic keyboard is BLE as well, or Bluetooth as well.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you both.
Yep, thanks.
Sounds good. So with that, I think it is time to wrap up. This has been the CircuitPython Weekly for June 1st, 2020. The recording of this will be posted to YouTube and podcast services, as well as a notes document available on GitHub and in the notes of the YouTube video as well. If you are interested in chatting with us all week, you can join us on the Adafruit Discord at adafru.it/discord. We are in the CircuitPython channel all week, and if you are looking for help, there's the Help with CircuitPython channel as well. And with that, thanks everyone for participating, and stay safe and stay sane through all of the stuff that everyone is going through right now. And we hope to see you again next week. Thanks everyone.
Thank you, Kattni.